You can see it because you own it. I think you have to put it live
Yeah.
now.
Here we go.
I see it now.
Because you own it. I think you have to put it live
Yeah,
now.
yeah. You get it. I had to put it live. Here we go.
And we got some reverb.
Thank you.
I see it now.
Because you own it. I think you have to put it live now.
Yeah. You get it. I had to put it live. Here we go.
And we got some reverb.
Yeah. You get it. I had to put it live.
Okay, I muted everyone for a moment to cancel that loop there. So
But
I kind of liked it.
I did get the notification. My my background refers to the video version of the loop as opposed to the audio. Whatever.
It was starting to develop a good beat.
That's what I'm saying. We're gonna have to like remix that or something. Make a song out of it.
I was hoping Brian would bust into rapping right there.
Oh God!
It's an art form.
If you had ever heard me in karaoke, you would have you'd never wish that upon anyone.
Santa Claus has joined us.
Where? Who?
You all know Mad Dog?
Indeed.
Hi, John.
Hello, everybody.
I actually think, John, that you were on the same flight as me back from Ohio Linux Fest back in December. I think I saw you when you were getting off the plane. I almost said hi, but I didn't.
Oh.
All right. Well, with everything actually working again, I guess we can start over. So hi, I am Brian Clemens. I'm the project manager of the Rocky Linux project, and I'm the vice president of the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation. And passing it off to Greg.
Hi, everybody. I'm Greg. Let's see. I've been in Linux and open source for quite a while now. Let's see, ever since the mid to late 90s. Initially started off in bio and pharmaceuticals, and then made the bridge over into general science and computing at Berkeley Lab, Department of Energy, joint appointment to UC OP, and where I help scientists and researchers on high performance computing, and was part of a bunch of cool open source projects over the since then, including CentOS and if you're in the high performance computing space, things like Singularity, Aptainer, Werewolf, etc. I am lucky enough to be part of this group with Rocky Linux, and so I'll pass the mic off to, let's see, Neil. You're the first one that popped up for me, so.
Hi, I'm Neil Hanlon. I'm one of the infrastructure team leads here for the RESF. I've been in Linux for probably too long, but it's continuing to be too long. So I guess I'll keep doing it. I got my start back when I was probably my teens with a Ubuntu disk my brother brought home from college. It's kind of come full circle now. He's gone. He went over to the dark side for a while to Apple, and back last year he was asking me for recommendations on how to install Linux. So he's coming back.
Krista, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Krista. I'm just happy to be here. No, I'm teasing. Hi, I'm the community manager for the Rocky Linux project. It's been a lot of fun. I've been doing this for 2 or 3 months now. I don't know. But it's been a lot of fun just to get to know everybody on the project and to learn personalities and also to learn how everything works together. It's been a great opportunity this last week to just sit and watch as the team worked through the release project. Trying to get the newest version ready for release. has been very enlightening, and mostly I've just learned a lot of new words that I need to go learn what they mean.
Krista. Earrings. What are those?
Oh yeah, do y'all like my earrings? Only the very specialist people that are part of Rocky Linux have a set of these. They were sent to me in the mail by some people that live out your way, I believe, Greg. So this is my first road test. They're officially on camera now. But yeah, I'm having a great time. That's my job, and maybe I'll say some more things later, but that's good for my introduction.
Yeah, and Chris has done an amazing job at spinning up our latent community team. For a long time, that team lead seat was a little underutilized. So, but you know, we're getting back in the swing of things now, which is great. So let's see here. On to Sharif.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sharif. I'm a part of the Rocky Linux release engineering team. Mainly, I'm focusing on getting the secure boot environment and setup up and running. And on my day job, I work as a senior cybersecurity officer for the Irish Center for High-End Computing, where we manage the Irish National Service for High-Performance Computing for all researchers.
Thanks, Sharif. And also, it took me a minute to realize that that wasn't a real background.
No.
Okay, let's see here. Chris.
I'm Stack. I am the testing team lead. Try to help out with anything on release day for doing quality assurance checks and verify as much as we can to make sure things work well. I also help out with the SIG Alt Arch and am working with Sharif and some of the others to get a wide variety of the single board computers available to run under Rocky. It's been very hard to get your hands on a Raspberry Pi, which seems to be very popular, but there are plenty of other boards, but some of the other boards are a mixture of weird drivers, weird kernels, weird support, inconsistent distro stuff. We're hoping to grow that community, especially with those that like to have the small form factor systems with Rocky Linux.
Awesome. And okay, we've only had to sell a few contracts for our firstborns in order to get those Raspberry Pis, but luckily they're coming through. On to Taylor.
Hi, folks. My name is Taylor Goodwill, and I've been working with Rocky since the beginning of the project. I also am one of the leads of the infrastructure team, mainly just trying to keep tools running and things going to serve the community and the process at large.
Thanks, Taylor. Scott?
Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Shen. I'm on the Rocky Linux security team. I'm also maintainer of a number of open source security projects. The big one that I'm just joined in the last, I guess, decade is it's called OSEC, which is a host-based intrusion detection system. But I'm also involved with ClamAV, Mod Security, OpenVAS, and several others. And this is Tater Tot. He is also on the security team, and you will almost always see him on any feed we do with the Rocky Linux project. Back to you, Brian.
Thanks. Yeah, we anytime I see Scott, I need him to turn that camera on for Tater. But and I didn't know we were doing Linux villain or origin stories. So my story is I started out with Fedora Core 4 on a Toshiba Satellite L25, which was some college student special piece of junk from Best Buy, and I ended up going with Linux just because I wanted to get access to free Wi-Fi. And so there we go. I loaded up those Mad Wi-Fi NG drivers and Aircrack, and there we go. Suddenly I had faster internet thanks to my neighbor's DSL when my parents still had dial-up. So there we go. That was fun. All right. So it's been a while since we were last here. I think the biggest thing to touch on, the biggest difference has been Rocky Linux 9 and all the associated tooling that we actually put together in order to make Rocky Linux 9 happen. So Rocky Linux 8, we actually started out with the conventional build system that's used for enterprise Linux. So, Koji and all that sort of thing. Well, we actually built some tooling around that too. Distro build, some additional tooling to make Rocky Linux 8 builds easier. But Rocky Linux 9 uses an entirely new build system called Peridot. Actually, Neil, do you mind if I put you on the spot to talk about Peridot a little bit? Or okay, I'll take that as a yes. So Peridot is actually very cool because it's a cloud native build system. It takes full advantage of the functionality that we have in the cloud. So it can spin up instances to actually, it can spin up build workers and that sort of thing. We also have our build workers in, OSU, OSL, so that we can build like some additional architectures. So for example, PowerPC, S390X, that sort of thing. So Rocky Linux 9 was an impetus to really, create our own infrastructure for building that actually works for us. We're looking at moving our builds of Rocky Linux 8 to Peridot as well. That work is ongoing. Before I move on, anyone want to say anything about Peridot? Taylor, Sharif? Wow. Okay. So moving on. Another big.
I never.
Yeah.
I always
There we
talk. So you can always call on me if you need to fill some space. A couple cool things about Peridot really was trying to solve some of the issues that early CentOS had with regards to small teams. That was really, we had to manage the security envelope of trusted keys of what we were doing with the operating system, and as a result, we didn't have a huge number of people that we quote unquote trusted with those keys. So the people that built CentOS was always a very small team. We wanted to always ensure that we had the ability to create a larger, more diverse team and people coming into the project. And one of the things that we identified we needed to do is to create a solution for trusted build pipelines and supply chain. And Peridot was built along this line of thinking and how do we do that better. And as Brian mentioned, it is a cloud native build system. The intent is for us to be able to very easily and quickly spin it up into with just Helm charts, so people can go and reproduce everything that we're doing with Rocky Linux. One more point I'll just make really quick is that every version of Rocky Linux that we've ever released is completely reproducible from the perspective of everything is based on open source tooling that is freely available and community maintain and run. And so with Peridot, we're just trying to make that easier. That's one of the best ways that we can ensure longevity and survival of the project, is to ensure that others can reproduce it in a true kind of open source community way. So that's been a big focus for us.
Yep. And like you said, expanding or the ability to sort of give more people access to the build system is also extremely helpful with our burgeoning special interest group community. So, I mean, Stack can talk a lot about this simply because of the Alt-Arch SIG being probably our most popular SIG at the moment. But yeah, Peridot is going to make life much easier for SIGs. You don't have to go around like seeking approval from release engineering to do what you need to do. Another big change that we've made is just organization wise. We've been working on this a long time, and we probably talked about it last time too. But standing up the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation as a fiscal host for this project and other projects. So that it took, honestly, since the start. I mean, we really started talking about this in December 2020. Like, we've been talking about this for a long time, about how we actually want to legally organize the project and ensure its longevity, and build an organization that ensures that. And so we finally, it took a long time to put together a charter that everyone was happy with and a set of bylaws that everyone was happy with. We've gone through several iterations, we've gone through multiple rounds of lawyer approval and that sort of thing. And when we finally got something, through, when was that? When were the elections?
No, don't ask me. Time is a ridiculous blur. Like,
yeah. Yeah, no, it's weird because I still
It was in
often
January,
remember.
I think.
Yeah. I still sometimes remember conversations that I feel like happened last month, and then it turns out that they were back when we were still on Slack and didn't have Mattermost yet. Like, it's, yeah. But yeah, so we finally got elections through. We elected a good board of folks, and we're actually running with that now. So that kind of takes the burden of some of the boring stuff like financials and that sort of thing, and takes that off of the Rocky Linux project, which is definitely helpful. In addition to that, we managed to do the Rocky Linux project board elections. And let's see, we also spun off the Peridot project as its own project, independent project, under the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation as well. And they had their election. Luckily, that was a very easy one to do, since it was a pretty obvious group of folks working on that. Let's see here. What else should we brush on? Actually, I think a fun thing to talk about would probably be FIPS. Greg, if you wanted to talk a bit about that.
Sure. So we promised FIPS to the community at an early stage, and there was a lot of skepticism that we got as a result of that, because FIPS is a very expensive process and it's a long process to implement. Also, in conjunction with that, if you're familiar with FIPS, there's different versions of FIPS. The version of FIPS that most people have been using for quite some time, and Scott, please do jump in if there's anything you want to add. But everyone was using 140-2,
Right.
And right when we started talking about Rocky and doing FIPS for Rocky, it was moving to 140-3, and they basically just end of life 140-2. Now, there's a lot of complexities as a result of that. There's a lot of background echoes and whatnot. Cool, thanks. So what we wanted to do is, again, we wanted to get FIPS compliance, but to do that, we basically now had to go and rework the base operating system, which originally was pretty close to 140-2, but then there was a lot of changes we had to implement for 140-3. And so we've been doing this on the CIQ side for, oh my goodness, I'd say a year, almost a full year at this point. It is now well over $1 million investment to get this done. And this is one of the reasons why it came through CIQ. But one of the commitments from CIQ was to ensure that this goes back to the community and it's not held hostage by CIQ or any company. And so CIQ is actually putting the FIPS certification in the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation name. And all of those FIPS certified binaries are going to be released publicly available. So what is currently in the government labs as of right now are all 5 modules for Rocky Linux 8.6. And I can talk a little bit about why it's 8.6 and the versioning and whatnot around that in just a moment. But those are all in the government labs right now getting tested and validated, which means it could be anywhere from, you know, a month from now, maybe 2 months from now, to another
they
8
move
months
at
from now.
government speed.
Yeah.
But I want to point out something really important about this effort that CIQ, I don't work for CIQ, it has done, is that this is Rocky Linux is the only community operating system to have this. There's nothing else that has this. So there's certainly commercial distributions of Linux like Red Hat and Oracle Linux that have it, and Ubuntu One. But Rocky Linux is the only community platform at all in the world that has this across any operating system, not even just Linux. It could be, you know, pick out like OpenSolaris or something like that. None of them have this. So it's a huge deal for us in the security team to be able to say we have validated cryptographic modules across the board. We're talking, and certainly I think Sharif can even speak to this. We're talking kernel down. Like, I mean, no, it's not even kernel down. It's BIOS down. Like, so we have a chain of trust from hardware to user land with this. And yeah, again, from the security team, you know, to be able to put that feather in our cap is a pretty big deal.
Yep. We got tons of people when we started this project asking us about FIPS and common criteria certification and that sort of thing. And so we're really glad that, you know, we will be able to offer this. And yeah, as Scott said, so Ubuntu used to have free FIPS certified modules, but now you have to subscribe to, what is it called, Ubuntu Plus or something?
Ubuntu One.
Yeah. And let's see here. Oracle, I think, also has a few. Like, I'm not sure if they have everything FIPS certified, but you know, it's Oracle, so it's not exactly one-to-one with Enterprise Linux. But yeah, okay. And actually, Greg, I realized I forgot to pass back to you regarding the RESF stuff, if you wanted to talk about that as well.
I think pretty much everything you mentioned regarding RESF was perfect. Maybe the only thing I would just add is the motivation of what we're trying to solve and why we're trying to solve it. You know, one of the things that when we first spun up Rocky Linux, one of the things that we heard from a number of organizations and people in the community was, you know, we want this to be truly community. We do not want a company holding this hostage in a situation where they could, you know, end of life, you know, an operating system that's foundational to a lot of their infrastructure. I mean, you know, Red Hat has, you know, been one of the best open source, you know, companies, open source supporting companies ever. And for them to do this, you know, kind of shook people up a little bit. And we've seen this a number of times. It wasn't just Red Hat that's done this. I mean, you know, this has happened, you know, going back a number of years, all the way back to, I think MongoDB was probably one of the first ones that got a lot of press and attention. And even after, you know, CentOS did this, Elastic did exactly the same thing, right? They pivoted the project in a way that was no longer open source. So one of the messages we heard loud and clear was, do not let a single company run this, and make sure that this stays free of corporate control, and it cannot be held hostage. So as we started developing and thinking about this, it was a little bit of a pivot, to be honest, of how I was initially thinking about it, which was, you know, I have a company, it's well funded, and you know, we can put in money and invest in this, and this can be under the company CIQ. Very quickly, we decided that would be a very bad thing to do to the community, and so CIQ has always taken a non-controlling role with regards to Rocky Linux, all the way to the point where when we developed the bylaws and the charter for the RESF, it limits any sort of single corporation involvement over 1/3 of any people representing a single company on the board. So the board is always going to be free of a single company influence as it is written and as it is executed. So that's a really big difference. Couple that with no company can ever buy a board seat. All board seats are merit based is also a fairly significant differentiator with other projects and in some cases other open source foundations that are out there. Right, we're not selling board seats. There's no pay to control or pay to play model. It is all based on merit and based on people that are involved with that project and with the community. And so this we felt, gave us a really good foundation for ensuring that there's not going to be any sort of negative control of this. And the one thing I'll mention is this is not done, right? So we're still working on this, and we're still always trying to make this better. At the moment, this is not a done thing by any means, but one of the things we said early on is, we're going to investigate even becoming a tax or what is it called? Nonprofit, sorry. Becoming a nonprofit. And does that actually also solve the needs of what it is that we're trying to do? Now, historically, I have not been of the opinion that nonprofits do a great job of protecting open source communities. And of course, there's a lot of cases in which they have. So it's a minority case, of course, but under some conditions, they may not be very protective. So, we have not done it yet. It is currently a public benefits organization. And but we are considering converting this over to a nonprofit, and I'm currently working with several nonprofit attorneys and experts to figure out how is the best way of doing this. The last point I'll mention in this is nonprofits are not magic pills or guarantees of integrity. Really, I've known lots of corrupt nonprofits where they did not do exactly what they said. And we've just seen recently a nonprofit that became one of the most valuable companies ever, which is OpenAI, right? They started off as a nonprofit, as an example, and then converted and pivoted after they got funding, which was non-equity based funding. Very kind of interesting situation. Sam did some interesting things there. I'll just leave it at that. But again,
what I was actually going to mention is that I'm not taking a side and saying it was right or wrong or anything like that, but I know there's a lot of people in the community very upset about it. So it is a very timely, very public transition where a nonprofit did not necessarily protect the organization. So using the nonprofit as an excuse or a silver bullet to magically protect it is not it, which is why Greg is being so careful in the decision of how we handle this.
The public benefit company may actually be more protection for the community than nonprofit.
That is exactly what
nonprofits going rogue for profit is pretty old. The Congress and the Air Force got royally pissed off when SDC, the software development company, merged with Burroughs, and the regents of the California reaped a windfall. The Air Force was unhappy.
Not only that, I mean, a lot of nonprofits are really just like nonprofits in name only. I mean, the NFL was a nonprofit for until what was it? Like, yeah, I forget when they changed out, but yeah,
we called it not nonprofit.
If you eat all of the nonprofit as lobster at the annual meeting, instead of distributing dividends, it can be a nonprofit. You just have to make the profit disappear.
Or you know what? Maybe I'm just not understanding it correctly, and the NFL just never doesn't make any money. Maybe you never know.
The league office doesn't have to make money as long as the members do.
There we go.
long as
So
somebody pays
actually,
tax.
something I wanted to bring up. Sorry to bounce back, but I was reminded when we were talking about security earlier in FIPS. So our another big change that we've made recently is our secure boot environment. We've completely shifted the way that we do secure boot, and Sharif actually came prepared to talk a little bit about that. So I'd be honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to his talk. So Sharif, if you wanted to talk about that.
Sure. So we had secure boot since Rocky 8.5, and that's a little bit of an involving process and a little bit painful. Not also from the technical side, but also from the approval side. So if you don't know, secure boot basically is the way that you can have a chain of trust between your hardware and up to the kernel and the kernel module. So the BIOS or the firmware of the hardware will have something which we call platform key, which is coming from your vendor, that sign a special key that called kick, that signs a database that includes two certificates that are mainly Microsoft, and some hardware will have an Ubuntu certificate. And this was a requirement from Microsoft when they released, I think, Windows 7, that they need to have to make sure that any operating system will need to run in a secure boot environment if you need to enable secure boot. And so the Linux community came together and you wrote something called CHIM, which is like a very early boot stage. And you as a distro, so us as a Rocky and Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation, we have a CA embedded into our shim, and we have to go through another process, which is verifying the foundation with extended certificates, and then Microsoft will sign our shim for us. And then we can sign our grub kernel and FWUpd, which we use to update the firmware on the hardware, via a certificate that is trusted by our CA, and that's how you get secure boot. So your hardware trusts your shim then will verify that your kernel and grub and FWD are secure and trusted. And this will allow you to make sure that your machine shouldn't run any kind of non-trusted code before the kernel boots and the grub. Of course, as everything, there is some security holes that might happen. And there was a very famous one that just got fixed on the 9th of May, this like a week ago, which is called the Black Lotus, which was a bug in actual Microsoft Boot Manager for the secure boot. And but now we can make sure that you have all this kind of trust. The issue that we were facing at the beginning, that there is not enough information clear, and also the Microsoft requirement is very restrictive. So all the operation has to be in a FIPS 140-2 level 2 compliant data centers, which is we were able to fulfill. All the keys, everything is in FIPS 140-2 level 3 for physical tampering. And recently we decided to shift a little bit to have to build our own, in this secure facility, our own HSM, which will allow us to be able to sign multiple architectures to get secure boot moved to different like PowerPC and Z systems. And that will allow you as an end user, not if you don't want to use Microsoft certificates because some of them are not supporting this hardware, you can roll your own certificates and you still have secure boot running with your environment. And the first distro we are testing this with at the moment is actually Rocky 9.2. So all the certificate keys and the environment that's signing the secure boot for 9.2 is the new architecture that we built. Back to you, Brian.
Thanks, Sharif. All right. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. One thing that actually kind of spurred on our transition to our new secure boot environment is the fact that the data center that our old environment was in was actually closed. So that kind of helped. Okay, so on to Krista to talk about some of our upcoming community participation. Maybe a review of what we've done so far.
Yeah, it's been exciting for me to feel like part of this team of going and being an ambassador for Rocky Linux. It's so much fun to engage with the community and to feel like I'm not selling anything, but goodwill and good vibes and connection, and allowing people to connect over the values that Rocky Linux has as a platform that it shares with open source. So far, since I know that people have been to events before, but since the beginning of the year, which is about when I've been aware of it, one of our documentation team and I were able to travel last weekend out to Portland and attend a technical writing conference called Write the Docs. And we got to be representatives for Rocky Linux there. One of the things was we had a chance to run a writing day and to invite people to begin to work on a documentation platform, specifically working on one of our projects, which is to go through and make sure all of our wording and all of our existing documentation is consistent and proper and up to date. So that's one of our current initiatives that we're working on. Coming up here in a couple weeks, we're going to be attending the Southeast Linux Fest in Charlotte, North Carolina. That'll be the second weekend of June. And then immediately after that, a couple of us are going to head straight from there up to Vancouver, British Columbia to the Open Infra Conference. And I know what the Linux Fest is about. I'm sure that the Open Infra Conference is about infrastructure. And I'm learning all the way. I love the chance, though, to meet people and engage and to pass out stickers. That's my personal favorite part.
And we're pretty excited about the Open Infra conference because Neil is actually a contributor to a few Open Infra projects. If you wanted to touch on that, Neil.
Yeah, that's a project I've been working on for a little over a year now. Been working with the OpenStack Ansible folks, which is a deployment project for OpenStack based on Ansible, or you're using Ansible. So it uses a set of playbooks to build out a cluster and maintain a cluster. And the point of it is kind of to provide a way to integrate with maybe your existing configuration management system and something you're comfortable with to be able to run that cluster and then also perform day two operations on that cluster, like doing upgrades, managing all of the different projects and tenants that you have, and all that sort of stuff. So it's a great way to get up and started with OpenStack. If you're not familiar with it as well, it can be a really great learning resource. So that's something I've been working on for the past kind of year or so, and have actually migrated from, or helped them move over from running tests on top of CentOS and CentOS Stream, kind of through that whole migration process of what to do with CentOS and getting over from CentOS 8 to CentOS 9 Stream, and then ultimately recently we've had to make the decision to change the tests over to Rocky from CentOS, and we're still doing the CentOS tests, but they're set to non-voting just because we've had so many issues with them, which is a good and a bad thing. The bad thing is that bugs are not great, but the good thing is that it's given us the opportunity to also go and contribute those fixes and changes upstream and report bugs to CentOS and work with the community there. So overall, it's been super great. And recently they nominated me to be a core reviewer for the projects there. So that's been just another cool thing, I guess, to put on my resume. And I've fooled more people into trusting me. So that's always a good thing.
There we go. Let's see here. We can ride on your coattails, Neil. Let's see here.
It's kind of interesting too. It's come back like a little full circle. I got my kind of start, I guess, into open source. Maybe that's when I was radicalized or something at OpenStack Summit back in 2016. It was actually in Boston. That was like the first conference I really attended. It was maybe my second year of working in a job and going there, and I think it'll be fun to go back and see it with a different set of eyes.
And you picked up a pamphlet there that said like what, how to talk to your children about open source software or something. There we go.
It's kind of funny. There's a book on my bookshelf about OpenStack networking, and the guy that wrote that book is one of the contributors to OpenStack Ansible too. So I was like, I have your book.
Now, speaking of contributing upstream and reporting bugs upstream, a recent incident that we're kind of excited to talk. Well, I'm not sure if excited is the right word, but something that really proved our QA testing to be thorough is during the production of Rocky Linux 9.2, we actually encountered a pretty significant issue with Python on PowerPC. And so Stack, or did you want to talk about how the testing team discovered this and how it was handled?
Well, I mean, it was a little bit of a whole lot of teams plus a lot of community feedback to handle it. But yes, so Rocky has a fairly extensive testing process. And there's a lot of trolls out there that immediately will jump on and say, what, you're saying other projects don't test? No. What I'm saying is we go overboard. We do a lot because we don't want to break things for our user base. And so we test a lot of known configurations that have caused problems in the past. We have looked to projects like Fedora and OpenSUSE for how they do a lot of their QA testing. We use OpenQA as our baseline for a lot of tests that we automate to do a lot of installations across a variety of platforms, which we're currently expanding on. And so we test a whole lot of stuff. A lot of the very common methods that people install, how they install from network installs to ISO installs, upgrade paths. We test a wide variety of things. We check. We've got a fairly large checklist of things that we go through. We have some that require some setup for like OpenQA. Kind of, you need to know a little bit about it to jump in. But we also have a lot of community testable items. Things as simple as, can you burn this to a CD and boot it? Well, not CD anymore, a DVD. Because we do have a lot of environments still that, they're kind of closed environments, and that's how they do their installs and updates are physical media. And that's something that anybody with a DVD writer and a couple of discs can help out with, to doing something as like, well, I don't have a DVD writer anymore, but do you have a spare thumb drive? If you've got a spare conference drive that is, 8 to 16 gig, we have tests to be able to DD our image to a thumb drive, and can you boot that? So there's a lot of very simple tasks and items. Even things like take an existing system and update. Does firewall still work? Does SSH still work? Those seem like simple items, but they've bitten somebody in the past, and so we check for these things. With regards to this one specifically, notice that the installs were failing, and we had to pull in pretty quickly several people to kind of look at it. And Neil, you're the one who beat your head on this for a weekend before we really pulled in and had a war room of what was it, like 20 people at one point assisting in that Jitsi call. I mean, it was pretty extensive of trying to dig in and figure out the root cause and whether or not it broke things for everybody or just a specific use case.
Yeah, that was kind of incredible how many people were on that call on Monday. The 20 or so people. I was kind of not expecting that many people to be interested, first of all, and also available to join and participate. So that was super cool and really helpful. And I think a great part of our community is definitely the testing team for sure. The bug itself was very weird. I thought, I spent the weekend just thinking it with my tooling for building the images. And it took us a long time to even think hey, maybe this is actually a problem with something else and not our bug, which is a lesson in and of itself, I think, to reevaluate, take a step back, get some other eyes on it, get some more opinions, and it's an excellent reminder to make sure that we do that and take a step back to look at those sorts of problems there. I think we not that it would have changed anything, but it would have saved it maybe some headache to at least identifying kind of a root cause and nailing it down so that we could open a bug report.
But yeah, we're very proud that our QA team managed to catch that. So our releases might come out maybe a little slower than other projects, but it's because of this extensive testing. We do things right or not at all. And that issue that we caught, I mean, that has a potential to break existing systems. I mean, a fresh install just doesn't work at all on it. So we actually decided to hold back updates for PowerPC on Rocky Linux 9.2, just for the safety of our users. And, as mentioned, these things are contributed upstream. So this bug was reported upstream, and, we're working on it ourselves as well in order to see if we can contribute a fix as well. Let's see here. Okay. 10 minutes left. Okay, perfect. So I wanted to leave about 10 minutes for any questions that anyone might have or any topics they might want to touch on. Is there anything that anybody wanted to hear more about or any questions? All right, I'll take that one as a no, unless there's anything in the chat there. Let me see. Oh, wait. Oh, okay. Krista has something. Here we go.
Hi. I have a question actually for the user group. You all have been listening to us talk for a little bit. But you look like you might be some people with some experience in the Linux community, but you also look like maybe you've had some, kinds of experiences like they've been describing with the 9.2 testing and release cycle. I mean, gosh, I've heard so many stories of people, having to deal with finding a bug in a code and how many hours it takes to find it. But you're stuck until you get it. That said, we've got 9.2 mostly released yesterday. And I hope it's not a state secret that we are now officially working on 8.8. That is the current testing and release cycle in the queue. But in the meantime, we've got all these people who just spent a week working very long nights and long days and being really intense with their dedication to this project. They've had 24-hour break and now they're jumping back into it. And so I wondered if from your life experience, if you would like to share with our team any special pieces of advice for them as they are in this stressful place where they're so intense. What are your tips and tricks for getting through the hard hours and the hard days?
Actually, a few months ago, I previously tried to install a Rocky 9 on a VM, and it just wouldn't go. it was acting like it didn't recognize the CPU or something. And it was kind of an old machine, the VM host. But then more recently, I tried installing it on a server I got off eBay a couple of years ago, and it seemed to have the same problem. But apparently, whatever it was, as far as I could tell, it couldn't boot because the CPU was like unsupported or something.
So Rocky Linux 9 uses x86 v2, that microarchitecture spec, or the minimum level of microarchitecture features on it is x86 v2, which I think isn't that everything since Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge? I forget.
I think Sandy Bridge.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right. So do you happen to know what generation the CPU was?
Not offhand. It's a super micro rack mount server I got on eBay for like $99, and I have no idea how.
If it's
old this
$99, it might be a little aged.
Well, I actually got a lot of servers like that over the years. I think they came from financial firms like Fidelity, where they'd buy a bunch of machines for $10,000 one year, then they need to throw them away and get a new one the next year. And they're basically only, as far as they're concerned, they're only worth the cost of the scrap metal. So they put it on eBay and it ends up being $99.
Gotcha. But yeah, that's a common issue that we encounter is just folks working on or trying Rocky 9 on, well, Enterprise Linux 9 in general. All of the Enterprise Linux 9 distributions are having users report this, but it's just because Red Hat decided that the minimum microarchitecture level is x86 v2. I don't recall offhand exactly which CPU extensions that entails, but yeah.
The flip side on that is that for folks using Apple hardware, is that you can use Rocky 9 on an M2 class CPU on Apple hardware, but you can't. And this isn't our decision. We are at the whim of Upstream for this, but you can't run Rocky 8 on, at least with our vanilla kernel, on that hardware. So it's like, you kind of split it. Like probably in the older class gear, Rocky 8's the right way to go. And then on something like an M2, you'd want to go with Rocky 9.
Let's see. All right. That should answer that, I think. But wanted to get back to Chris's question before we forget it. Her question for you guys: what advice do you have for us?
Not sure, but I want to retrograde a little bit. I was pretty excited about the FIPS discussion. I once worked at a encryption company that made radios and stuff like that, and for key exchanges we used FIPS and had to use commercial Linux. This was, I think, before commercial Unix. This is before Linux came out. I think it was the 1980s. So I've got some experience in FIPS. But not,
yeah, so the FIPS thing is really interesting too, because being in Japan, I work with a lot of organizations that require different sorts of certifications, and so I've come across common criteria a lot, and it's kind of interesting to try see how all these certifications work. So for example, we will need to get FIPS first and then common criteria if we end up going for that. It's definitely quite a few hoops to jump through in order to make that happen. Actually, Greg, is common criteria something that's even being talked about yet, or
yes. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a whole nother set of hoops.
The one we're in the process of working on right now is a standard called 800.171, which is effectively an operating system producer's certification to, in this case, the federal government. Basically, going over our processes, like how do we, the RASF and the Rocky Linux in general, like how do we operate? Like how do we create a software supply chain where, effectively we've got separations of privileges and all sorts of very, very probably boring things like that ensure that no one person could poison the chain, and how do we defend against that kind of stuff. So that's probably the next one on our radar. Although I'll be honest, the FIP certification is such a big deal because it's going through every single cryptographic module we have, all of them, and it is, in terms of being able to do this effectively, to do effective encryption like this, it involves hardware, it involves software, it involves cryptographic modules, it involves the way that we do things in user land. It is 100% an operating system thing. I mean, you can't really just do it in one little piece and be done. This is a huge, huge project. I'm excited that we're doing it because I've done these before in the past, but never for a community project like this in my life.
And just addressing John's question as to whether HPC is a focus for us in the chat there. So actually, our roots really are HPC. The Rocky Linux project started in HPC-NG, and I still feel kind of bad about that because we blew through. They were using a free Slack instance, and Rocky Linux got so much attention. We got, I don't know, I think we got like 2,000 users or something in like a month, or like in a week. It was something crazy. It was
So HPC had about 1,000 users before we started with Rocky Linux. By the time we left, it was well over 10,000.
Oh God. Yeah. So it was kind of crazy, and just the enormous amount of message traffic completely blew away all of their chat history, because the free Slack server has like a chat history limit. And it was so bad that they would like post a message one day and just not have it the next day, because we were just blowing through the chat history that quickly. So yeah, we were definitely irritating the HPC-NG folks. But luckily we moved to Mattermost. What was that? Wasn't that just 1 month? I think we moved to Mattermost in January, or at least that's when we started playing with it. Yeah. I think that was January 21.
To the point you mentioned, yeah, it we had so many people joining. I think a lot of people just messaged me directly, and the list of unread messages that I had, it took me hours to go from one side to the next. And it got to the point where, Brian, to your point, where I see I have an unread message. It's a direct message, and I go there and it said, you have already surpassed your 10,000 messages. So go get a professional account if you want to see this message. So I was like losing messages even before I can get to the message. It was a crazy situation then. It was busy.
Alrighty. Any other subjects we want to touch on?
Yeah, one question that I had, and I think there's been a little discussion on it. The project leader for Fedora recently got laid off by Red Hat. And I'm wondering, actually, Ed was really wondering to me if that is going to mean that Red Hat
I think your audio cut out there.
Looks like his whole connection dropped.
Yeah, it's not just his audio. His
Oh,
face.
my bad.
And this is connection lost to his name.
Oh, okay. Well,
We can wait
he
for him to
followed
get
up in the
back.
chat, asking whether Red Hat would cut Fedora loose. Which I'm not sure if that's something that I can speculate on. If anyone else wants to, though.
No, that was Ed in the
I'd
chat.
love to speculate.
I don't think it's good to speculate.
that's-
There's plenty of people doing that on Reddit
Yeah.
right now, and they can
No.
act
Exactly.
why they speculate, but that's not really our thing.
I think what we can say, at least, is what Matt himself has said. Like, Fedora has existed for before him, and it will exist after him. Like, that's what he's said publicly, and I think that's largely true. The Fedora is a product of the community. There's some nuance to that in terms of like what actually Fedora is, right? But it is the community, and I think that I personally, I don't think that Red Hat would do that. But that's just me. Whether it will affect Fedora, I think that we're probably in an okay place.
Yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of people that predicted the demise of Fedora before, and it's never happened. So let's see.
Seems we're taking Jerry an awful long time to reconnect.
All right. Until then, or anyone else have something? Let's see here. All right. Well, if nobody else has something, it was definitely a pleasure being here again. Really glad to see you guys. It's it is kind of funny though. I didn't realize exactly how much changed until thinking about until attending this made me think about what has changed since we were last at this group. It's kind of crazy the speed at which things move here.
Yeah, it looks like Jerry reconnected. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, my system locked up.
Please don't say you were on Rocky.
I was just about to ask the same thing.
I was on Rocky.
Oh no.
I was on Fedora.
All right. So, what were you asking before you got disconnected right in the middle of that?
Yeah, recently the project manager from who manages the Fedora was laid off from Red Hat, and I was wondering if there was a possible problem there. It's a sign that maybe Red Hat is going to stop supporting Fedora down the road. I mean, we're not going to know that, but I'm just looking for some opinions there.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, we just brushed on that a little bit, but it's just not something that I think we can really speculate on. I mean, plenty of folks have predicted the demise of Fedora before, and it's just not. I don't think it's in the cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Did you have anything else before we wrap up?
Nope.
All right. Sounds great. It's definitely great being here. Look forward to talking with you guys again sometime.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.